Hello, and welcome to the Coach's Corner, brought to you by the Endurance Lab, where you can join us, recap the week, and answer your questions from the forum. My name is Jason Flores, one of your Endurance Lab coaches, and today I'm joined by Ian Murray, Mitch Dingermond, and our nutritional therapist, Andrea Cullen. We have a special treat today. One of our coaches actually headed over to Austria for Ironman Austria, and is going to share her story with us about supporting the race and kind of the things that athletes and coaches go through while they're at the race. So, how was the weekend, Andrea?
It was great. Hectic and a lot of very early mornings.
I can only imagine.
And it's funny because people kind of joke about how hard supporting is. And I took the challenge on of putting my Garmin on for the start.
Yeah.
And after a couple of hours, I was like, oh, I'm just wasting my battery here because I actually hadn't traveled very far. But that is in no way related to the amount of stress and adrenaline and everything that goes on the day. The whole race itself, the location, and I'll talk about that a bit more. But it was very contained, so we didn't have to travel a huge amount
That
of
helps.
ground. But even before the race swim start, I had already got hit in the face once, and I wasn't even an athlete. Someone turned around and gave me an elbow in the ear.
Oh man.
Um,
Did a lot of people bring support? Did you find that there was a big group of you guys kind of following the race around with their athletes?
yeah,
Is that
like
normal? Ian, do you see that too?
Austria,
Yeah.
the venue is just so beautiful that everyone was in for traveling when it came to
Nice.
going with their loved ones who were
Very
racing.
nice. Very
Yeah,
nice.
I've had similar experience too. The races, people bring
Yeah.
a lot of support, more support than they should. Um, it's definitely for little kids, like 3, 4, 5-year-olds. If you're doing Ironman, yeah, because they're
Hmm.
just gassed. So you got to
Interesting.
have a place to. We'll talk about more about that
Yeah.
in a little bit, but it's
Okay.
just, or the people who are going to watch but don't really understand what it is and weren't briefed, and they think they're going to go watch like the 30 or 40 minute 5 or 10K. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, it's a long day, and although like I obviously I love triathlon and I understand what's happening on the day, and I'm all in, and I'm there learning as much as supporting and having a great time. But not everyone who loves their triathlete loves triathlon. So for them, it
yeah.
can be a very, very long day, and they've been through it for the whole year of training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then they got to hear about it for days and weeks on
Yeah.
end afterwards.
I think it's an interesting point just from the start that there's a difference between supporting and spectating.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's probably much more need for someone to support than to spectate. I've always felt guilty with longer events having family come because I know that I'm putting a burden on them and it becomes something else that I'm just worried about during the day.
Yeah.
Are they okay? But
Yeah.
support is a whole different thing, right? It's someone who's there to help you. They have a job, they have a goal. It's completely different than spectating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had
Nice.
two groups to support. So I was kind of like
Huh.
with Team Ireland, and then I defected to Team South Africa. Um,
Fair weather
but I was
fan that
but I was
Andrea
trying
is.
to catch I was trying to catch everyone on the run course, because like it really, really matters to the athletes that they see you. And as often as possible, like I think, if you race, you see how much it lifts you. So to make sure that you're there no matter how tired you might feel at the end, really matters to them. So yeah, there's a lot of support, I think, mentally, and emotionally and practically, just to help with sorting logistics and things out.
That makes
Um,
sense.
Yeah, and on the support side, it's pretty stressful. Ruby's not here for this right now, but she would tell you that we go through a process of what are my expected times, plus or minus,
Mm-hmm.
for arrivals, for transition, or if there's a viewing point, that she should expect me. And man, if I'm off, it's stressful for her. So when I did
Yeah.
the race in DC, I told her the first stop was probably going to be 17 minutes on the bike, and I went through in 15, 20. So she missed me,
Oh.
and then she thought something happened,
Yeah.
you know. And then I've had where an Ironman race you blow up on the run, and or something happens in a race where you're just caught behind. Like in Chattanooga, I came out of the water 4 minutes slower than I thought because I had to stop midstream to put my chip back on since someone had tried to pull it off.
Whoa.
Almost effectively. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. I was like, dude, we're not at the front of the swim, so we don't need to be fighting over timing chips.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it puts a lot of stress on them, and then to be where they want to be when they want to be there, that can be extremely stressful. And I know when you're the supporter and your athlete comes by and they look like dog poo, and feel like it, and that's stressful too because you're like, ooh, how are they gonna get through this, and what's the conversation gonna be like afterwards?
Yeah, I get really nervous. Mostly when it gets to when I'm gonna see Garen on the run, because the face says it all, and you're just never quite sure what you're gonna get. But we missed him on the swim.
Huh.
Like they have the most amazing swim in Klagenfurt. So it starts off in this crystal blue lake. It was 26 degrees, so it was a non-wetsuit swim, which was quite anxiety provoking for some athletes. But then they swim up a canal for almost 1 kilometer, and they've all these little bridges over the canal. So you're literally standing right over, looking into the clearest water. You see everything about the swim stroke. And we were there on time, and we were watching, and we saw Daniela Rafe go under us. And I don't know what happened, but we missed Garen. He must have been swimming under her or something. And then, you get to the time when it's all out panic, like this shouldn't happen. But fortunately, with Europe now, they've scrapped roaming charges, so you can keep constantly on the tracker. So then you get, when they get out of the water, you know what's happening. So then you have all the little checkpoints. So it was difficult for the people that had come internationally because their charges and fees were going to be too much on their phones. So what was sort of happening is a couple of people in the group would have battery packs, because when you're tracking the race, you're eating your battery. And then for us that had the European Wi-Fi connections, they were tethering from us. So everyone was able to keep tracking live going on the race, and it's just ping, ping, ping. So that's actually the most exhausting part. You're all trying to keep on tracker, you're tracking loads of people, then there's communications on WhatsApp groups between the different groups, and then you're trying to physically find your athletes. So it's like your head has exploded by the end of the day, and then trying to get to all the right places at the right times, and find your way around, which can be a little bit confusing. So it is actually really mentally tiring.
So what day was the race, and what day did you guys travel to Austria?
Do you know, it's all such a blur. I was thinking. So we traveled Thursday. We flew to Vienna from Dublin. So we had a drive to Dublin. Luckily, we didn't have a bike to bring with us. So we did ship my bike, which was phenomenal. Yeah. It just saves so much stress and unexpected charges at airports and and unfriendly looking people at check-in and stuff like that. We flew into Vienna. So we had an option of Vienna or Munich. And we decided, we've seen bits of Munich, so we'd go to Vienna. But what I forgot, which is that you can fly to Trieste. So if anyone ever is thinking about doing Klagenfurt, it's a shorter drive up from Italy than it is down through from Vienna. So we arrived in...
but the roads are better in Austria.
The roads are unbelievable, but it was a 300 kilometer drive. So it was, for Europeans, that's quite far.
Yeah.
So after we fed ourselves, we didn't hit the road.
Commute that, Andrea.
Yes.
Well, the problem was it was late.
That's true. Yeah.
in an F-250.
Yeah.
So by the time we'd fed the athletes, we didn't get in till 2 a.m., which already was one late day. Then you're up early and it's registration and trying to check collect the bikes, check the bikes, get out for the last spin. Then Saturday I did the Iron Girls run, which I felt a little bit embarrassed by, because it's like, well, this is everyone's big weekend. It's all about Ironman. In the group we had lots of people who hadn't done Ironman before, so this was their weekend. But anyway, I ended up doing Iron Girls, and it was a massive event. There was the full-on race start. We had tracking, we had finisher medals. We ran into the full finish. We have all the finisher pics. We were live streamed. It was like, this is insane. About 600 people did it. But from an Iron person supporting perspective, all of this hanging around for the people that are actually racing the following day can be quite hard on the legs,
Yeah.
you know, I would recommend, you know, we were there more for a fun Ironman rather than a really serious one, which is what it normally is. But if you're serious, I would say get in, register, do minimal in the expo, get off your legs, get back into your hotel.
Mm.
It was almost 30 degrees. People were, you know, people forget to bring their hydration and their electrolytes. You're kind of in this massive, it's like a massive atomic bomb of energy. So there's way more anxiety going on. There's way more sympathetic nervous system drive. You're expending a huge amount of energy. You're on your legs, and standing around is a lot more tiring than actually training. So if you're serious about your race, I wouldn't be wasting time, even though it's really good fun kind of milling around and seeing everything that's going on. So, you know, I got to have a bit of fun. It was very hot, and it was only 4 kilometers. I was like, how are they going to run a marathon in this tomorrow? But as you'll hear, the weather sort of drastically changed
Yeah.
the following day. So yeah, where am I going with this? Yeah, mind your athletes. Don't let them be hanging around all day.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part I found is some of the events have the athlete meetings the day before the race, and that's brutal. I hate that. I almost always skip the athlete meeting if I can, because it's never at a good time. It's always late afternoon, early evening, something like that, when I want to be already back wherever I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah,
and I want to eat. Yeah, and I want to get to bed soon. And those stinking meetings are always bad. Ironman at bigger events does a good job of doing them, you know, 2 days before. But ITU Worlds was the day before, and and it was like 4:30, and then we had to do the parade after of nations after. I was like, I just want to be off my feet.
That's when you need someone to stand. Bless you. You need someone to stand in for you, right? Oh my god. Yeah, I said that's when you need someone to stand in for you. If you could.
Yeah.
Let's see. We talked a little bit about traveling. What about Taper Week? As you guys came in, because we're kind of at the event now. So just one step back, like as the weeks coming into the event, you had a couple tips that you guys came across that you wanted to put across, Andrea.
Yeah, well, we eat super clean in this house for that last 12-week block. There's really nothing, no alcohol, but enjoyable food. Like you can still have really nice food that's healthy food. And in that last week, the training will ramp down a little bit. But interestingly, like we were just discussing, the stress ramps up because you have the travel and the packing and the sorting out. And I'm definitely a fan of checklists because if you tend to be a nervous athlete, you might forget something crucial. So as the support person, without nagging, just kind of be like, you know, did you remember the few key bits or run through what you've packed? I think, you know, it might sound a bit condescending, but it's better than forgetting something.
Sure.
So just being super organized.
On that note, I developed a checklist that the wife and I go through when we're packing, and
Nice.
I pull everything out and according to the checklist, and then as I put it in the bag, I check it off.
Yeah.
I check it off. And once it's in the bag there, it's been double checked. I'm done. I don't touch it anymore. Because I know too many people pack, unpack, pack, and it's like they leave crap everywhere.
And I'm guessing you've saved that checklist too. That's a practice I've gotten into is once I've got a good checklist, I save, and if I add to it or modify, I just keep running with it because
it's in my Evernote.
Yeah,
nice.
Same as you, Mitch, and you don't have to think. It's brilliant. So yeah, you're going to be training a little bit less. You're going to be ramping up your carbs a little bit more. If you're worried about overdoing the calories, drop the fats somewhat. So the meal portions as taper week proceeds start to shift to a more carbohydrate dominant plate with your sufficient amount of protein, and the vegetables, they're not crucial at this point, but I still think it's good to have them there for antioxidant support. Knowing where you're traveling to is kind of helpful. We were a little bit lax because it was more of a fun Ironman with sort of really controlling and keeping things familiar, but we did a little bit too much of a pick and mix to get enough carbohydrates in the plate in those last few meals, and it may upset people's tummies when you do it that way. So I think sometimes bringing the oats that you're used to, or quick cooking polenta is another handy one that you could make in your hotel room, because all it needs is hot water and just, if it matters to you being organized there, it's not being a weirdo bringing food with you. I think it's just creating, what your normal, what you're used to. Now the supermarkets in Austria were great. They did have a good availability of gluten-free, but even the switch to different oats we found didn't work quite so well. And as someone gluten-free, I found I could buy stuff, but in the eating out in the restaurants, there was less options. It was kind of potatoes or rice, or they may not have had gluten-free bread and stuff like that. So bringing your own can be helpful. Actually, I did find at the expo there was a very interesting company called Gentura. It's a German company, and they've created like ready-to-go meals, more like what you'd see in adventure racing, but for like triathletes. And so it's all in German. You're sort of getting like breakfast is a mixture of millet, buckwheat, oats, and it's finely milled. So you just add your hot water, and they had a quinoa dinner.
Morgenstund.
Yeah. They had a dinner type one, and they also had what did they have? They had some really interesting mineral salts. That was the only really interesting thing at the expo. Actually, the expo was nothing new. I think if you watched, there were some good videos about the Frankenfurt expo. That one looked like the one to go to. So yeah, I think you need to be a little bit controlled about what your stomach's used to in taper week, but loads of carbohydrate. It's gonna feel weird eating quite so many, but like on Ironman day, it's your fueling and hydration that get you through that day. You have the fitness, but it can all go wrong if you get your fueling and hydration wrong. And I don't think you can really, you can write your plan and prepare your plan so that it might change a little bit. But your first race, I think we often see athletes that are phenomenal at 70.3 or other distances go in, and they have a lot of pressure put on them by family members or other athletes or even themselves because they're exceptional athletes. But your first time doing Ironman, it's your first time learning so many things. So I think to take the pressure off a little bit allows you to think better when you're out there on the course rather than feeling you've so much expectation on you to perform. What do you feel, Ian?
Yeah, actually, I found my first Ironman was my fastest, and I felt like I didn't have as much pressure, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was eating crackers with peanut butter on the bike, but it was definitely one of those where there was zero pressure to perform. There was zero pressure. It was just I treated it as a rolling buffet for the most part. But I do think that there are a lot of people that go up because they perform well in a marathon, or they perform well at half or Olympic distance, and people will think, well, that's going to translate automatically. I'm like, guys, it's a whole other beast.
Yeah.
Even in training, it doesn't matter how well you do in training for the most part, because most will change their race because they'll feel so good. You know what I mean? So you may have a race plan, but then like, well, I felt really good in the first hour of the bike, so I decided to let it loose. I was like, yeah, good call.
Yeah.
2 hours into your 9, 10, 12-hour event, and you're letting it loose, you're dropping the hammer. Yeah, and shockingly, your nutrition didn't work for you. I'm like, oh, come on. It wasn't your nutrition, it was your legs and your stomach that didn't work for you. So, but yeah, I do agree that people put too much pressure on themselves, so especially that first one. And the other one too is it's not just that first one, it's my first one in the heat, or my first one climbing, or my first one in the ocean. And all those variables that are new, if you're not an ocean swimmer, have fun doing something, out on the west coast of the US, or, or if you're not a climber, or you're not in the heat, and you from, I don't know, some crazy cold state like Michigan, and then you go down to Cozumel or something like that, you're going to get destroyed unless you really practice that. And riding inside is not the same as riding outside with full blazing sun. It's just not.
Yeah. Actually, that was one thing, touching on weather, that really struck me, is that, you need to be on those weather apps looking at what's going to happen. And in some countries, their weather predictions are going to be pretty accurate. Like I would assume in America, your weather is predict a lot better than Ireland, or we've the Atlantic that changes everything in a heartbeat. But in Austria, they had predicted that it was going to rain. Um, but the temperature, I was looking at someone's Garmin shot from on the bike. We had a full-on storm come in. It
Mm-hmm.
was almost 30 degrees when we were having a laugh on the line, watching everyone having a couple of drinks and everything. And then the weather just started. You could see it rolling in, and it just started to get colder and colder. And the Garmin reading on the bike went from almost 30 down to 12 degrees.
Wow.
Mhm.
So the athletes that got caught on the bike they were getting blown off. Like the winds and the lightning and the rain were just epic. We were frozen as spectators. Now the people on the run who were, finishing faster, they found it a welcome relief, which was
Yeah.
surprising because it was so wet. That I thought, this must be awful. But they were just happy to get cooled down. Whereas on the bike, it's a whole other story. They were descending at that point. It was very windy. There was athletes coming in, hypothermic, needing to get wrapped up in the space.
Yep.
Well,
Space
remember
Solar
too,
blankets. Yeah.
the runners at that point, they've already been dumping so much water on their heads that their shoes were soaked anyway. So
Yeah.
adding some rain, they were like, okay, now I'm just completely wet.
I remember seeing photos. I was like, is this the same place she was sending photos from like a couple hours ago? I felt like, where did she go?
Yeah, I
Armageddon.
couldn't believe it. And it just told me, like, as a supporter, you need to have packed for any kind of eventuality. So
Mhm.
we had some warmer clothes, and thankfully, someone I was with gave me even more because I got really cold. But even as an athlete, they headed off on the bike in almost 30 degrees. So you'd never
Yeah.
think of putting in a wind cheater or a rain jacket. But in retrospect, it really would have made a difference to have something really, really small that may have been helpful if you're someone who is, if you'd
Yeah.
watched that weather and saw it was going to get wet. So, trust your gut. If you suffer under certain conditions, it might be worth being prepared for those.
The other thing you had in the notes that goes on top of that with packing the right clothing was packing food for the supporters, because
Yeah.
we've had times with a couple races where there's nowhere to get food. You're in a park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Nowhere
luck.
close by.
And you tend to forget because it's all about the athlete, and you need to have a little picnic with you, and hydration and electrolytes. You're using a lot of energy out there on the day, and it's going to be way longer than you thought. If you're out there to support the whole team, it's not only what time your partner is finishing in. You're waiting for all of the athletes, and then you're hanging around because they disappear into some vortex when they go through the finishing line. And you're standing at the other side going, what is happening? And they're in there having a buffet and a massage and a chat. And eventually they get spat out the other side, but it's still not over. So you've got to get bikes collected afterwards, or bikes dropped back to shipping, or you need to get back out on course for another couple of hours to support everybody else. So it really is a long, long day. And what we found in Austria, and will probably happen in Europe, is that all of the restaurants are then closed. So you finish the race and you're starving. And we found one place. So they all tended to close between 8 and 10, which is nice. They're very family oriented in Austria. They go home. But we were left going, what are we going to eat? So we found the ideal meal for an athlete, which was a buffet in the hotel. And we saw Daniela Reef there as well, which was very, very cool.
She was just
there
like
was nowhere for her to eat, so she was at the hotel.
Yeah.
She's tiny, actually.
She's just hoovering up food.
Hey, Andrea, one thing that you had in your notes, and I thought it was really, it's obvious, but it's something we all forget, was wear bright clothes when you're supporting.
Yeah.
Yes. So Lucy with us she was a pro, fantastic, and she's a coach, and she's amazing, and she had the brightest pink, luminous stuff on. She's like, yeah, we're bright, and true enough, everyone just kept finding her. So I was like, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, so
Andrea in her like gray coat. Green.
Yeah, olive drab, earth tone.
You're saying
So
yeah.
Deirdre, when we've gone places, will make sure supporters, because she has her company that does that.
Oh,
And so
nice.
we've had some bright ones, or things that stand out.
Yeah.
Just make it easy.
Yeah.
And that helps. And Andrew's got the point too in her notes about having your planned meetup points.
Mhm.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's important, but even more important is The harder part is you cannot expect your athlete to find you because they are still brain mush
Yeah.
to a certain extent. And they're either manic or they're not, or they're just completely crushed. So it's really the supporter has to find that athlete and corral them up. Um, and so it's an added stress too because like Andrew said, they go into that vortex of the food and the recovery area that the supporter can't go back to. But then when the athlete decides to finally venture out, it's usually a hobble. They're kind of head down a little bit, you know, not moving fast. They're a bit drained. Um, and if the supporters haven't planned, okay, I'm going to go wait for that person for the next 20 minutes. If they go off to go support other people and try to come back, it's like having like the amber or the silver alerts out for the old people who get lost driving
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty much like that for the athletes.
Yeah.
You know, you get this
Yeah.
wandering athlete.
You just wish they keep the trackers on for after the race so that the support could find them afterwards. Are those like RFID? Are they GPS? They're pretty
Yeah, they're
reliable.
RFID.
Okay. Okay. Huh.
They're reliable-ish.
Okay. So you just get checkpoints as they come. You get updated as they come past checkpoints. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really handy. One thing actually, when they do finally get spat out of the tent, or some people might come straight out to see you, just get them to sit down and just check on how they are. You know, they've been on adrenaline and a high nervous system alert for the last 9 to 14, 15, 16 hours, and everything is like you just need to get them to kind of relax down and see, do they need more food? Do they need more salt? Do they need more liquid? How are they speaking to you? Because medical might have missed that they're not quite okay. And the athletes really are oblivious to it until they've kind of sat down and settled down because they're just on such adrenaline. And I was even mindful for it, even with athletes that really know what they're doing. They may not, it might be a race that they've pushed a little bit harder in. So even after this race, I was needing to give Garen a little bit more food and salt that I had in my bag, and then he was kind of fine. But if you're sensitive to energy, if you have your hand near an athlete that's just finished a race, their nervous systems are crazy. It's like they've just come through war. So just trying to get them to settle and calm down again and get their feet on the ground can be really helpful for them, and just a quiet space for a little bit so that they can center themselves before going back out into the craziness again. So they're your priority. No matter how bad you feel and how fed up you are and how much you want to go home, you need to make sure that your iron person is okay, because it has been a really tough day for them too.
Yeah, and I think the bigger part of that too, to really think of it, if you look at like what Garen did, he was actually in a battle, for his positioning. So he was burying himself, he was pushing himself. And you have to treat the athletes different from that, vice the ones who are going to do the event, but doing it at a more comfortable pace. And they're going to finish in 13, 14, 15 hours. And then those who are burying themselves to finish. So you have to look at it differently. So if an athlete it wants to maybe go top 5 and they bury themselves and go 8th, they're going to have a different reaction, which everyone's like, oh crap, 8, that's awesome. Yeah, but if you wanted 5, now you're buried in, and that person who maybe ran a 14 is just ecstatic and happy because they didn't crush themselves. And that person who buried themselves to finish, those are the ones actually I always worry about the most, because they're manic when they come across. They're so happy they finish, and then it is that 30 to 60 minutes later that their systems go, and we're done. Yeah, so you kind of have to look at what was my athlete's goals, what was their fitness level,
Yeah.
Where do they finish, how did the weather affect them that they wouldn't normally have had, like the hypothermic type people. So it's, as a supporter, you have to do all this mental math, all this calculus. We call it the battlefield calculus as it's going on, to say, okay, they looked good here, they didn't look good there. Okay, they looked good crossing the finish line, they didn't look good crossing the finish line. I think that's poo running down their leg. Whatever is going on.
Oh man. I had a question about the meetup points. So do you guys sit down like with logistics beforehand? You're like, okay, we're gonna try to be here, so look for us here. Or I mean, obviously there's some feed zones, but like, are you sitting down and marking things off? And is that part of like their I don't know. I'm thinking of like a sheet, or does he have to remember everything? Like you guys as athletes have to remember like, oh, okay, this I'm gonna see these people here and these people there. Is like, how's that work out in between the two?
Yeah, you're trying to so we were lucky. We knew we'd catch people during the swim looking
Oh,
straight
okay.
down at them. And
Okay.
then you can generally push your way into when they get out of the swim exit. So as they get to run along down the red carpet, you're there screaming,
Mm,
well done, well done. So you get to see them out of the swim safe and
got
onto the
it.
bike. Then generally you'll manage to locate a place where you'll catch them on the bike. But that can be rare. Sometimes they're out and gone, and you're not
Hmm.
going to see them again until they come in from their bike. But we had a point where you caught them on 90K, so you got to see everyone going by,
Mm,
and you get an idea of what they look like. Then on the run, a lot of Ironman courses will run quite a boring run for athletes with lots of loops. So we managed to get ourselves at an intersection where they were going both ways. So you were looking right and you
oh
were
wow.
looking left, and there was enough space to run along beside them inside, like on your side of the barrier. But sometimes it's nice if you can run a couple of steps with them and actually have a chat rather than just a high five. And then you need to master your taking a video and taking photos at the same time to keep them happy so that they get to see these things afterwards. But generally, when you look at the map, I found Klagenfurt or Ironman Austria very confusing with the route. I think some other people wrap their heads around it a bit better, but we had ourselves in a good position and we didn't move from that position because we had people coming at us. So with most races, there'll be a race map and you will be able to figure out some logistics from that. And your athletes, they'll have a rough idea of their time points. So then you use those time points. But when there's lots of athletes, it can get a little bit confusing then. But you can only do your best.
So we actually, Ruby and I do a recon of routes of where
Nice.
we're going to be.
Makes sense.
So when we did 70.3 Worlds in Chattanooga,
Huh?
we went along the run route and found a couple different places where I knew she could get to. Easy, so she could get to take pictures along different places in the course. And the same when we did Denmark for ITU Worlds. We do it most of the time is just, we'll figure out, hey, here's where I'm going to come out. Here's where I'm going to the water. Here's where I'm going to come out on the bike. Can you get from one point to another?
In that
If
time.
not, if not, then let's not worry as much about coming out of the swim, catch me in transition and coming out.
Yeah.
And then the post race is harder though because the area for the recovery area where the food and massages are is not necessarily well defined the day before. You just see marked off, so you're not really sure, is this VIP, is this going to be that or whatever. So sometimes it's harder. We try to say, okay, well, generally she finds me, looking half dead in the recovery area, eating something, and then she'll position herself in the point of where's a good place for me to meet her, and then when I come out, she'll go there. And most of them are pretty approachable. They're not. I mean, we're not caged animals. When we're in the recovery area, it's see-through fence usually. So you can usually come up and pass them. Like I always pass my shoes over. She passes me back my flip-flops. Take some pictures, whatnot. It's not barbed wire, razor wire up top. You know, don't feed
That's
the
a
animals.
question I have for you, Ian. What are your thoughts on athletes wearing, like generally when we go to a race and it's really hot, we start changing our shoes and athletes start wearing flip-flops around for 1 or 2 days before their race, which are actually quite hard on your feet because your muscles are having to hold on to the flip-flop. So do you feel athletes should stay in their trainers, or is that just being too fussy, or what do you think? Like I know flip-flops hurt me. I had blisters after one day.
This is after or before
No,
you're thinking?
it could,
Before.
Before, yeah.
yeah. So I pretty much live in flip-flops if I'm not in my work clothes or my or running or biking. So for me, I'm so used to it, it doesn't matter. But if you're not used to flip-flops,
Yeah.
like, when I mean used to flip-flops, I mean you wear them regularly. Like I don't have to worry about holding onto them. My feet intuitively know how to in them. But if you're not used to them, people they start curling their toes a little bit to keep that grip. You kind of have to, it's like high heels, Andrew. You have to admit, you guys understand this. You have to learn how to walk in them.
So I think what Ian's trying to say is do what you normally do, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if you wear your trainers all the time, or if you wear a pair of Keen sandals, or if you wear flip flops, or if you wear Doc Martens,
Wear those, yeah.
do what you do.
Yeah. Well, I do think though, going down to the expo and things like that, where it's better to wear your tennis shoes if you're having to walk much, just because
for sure.
you know, it don't have to be they don't have to be your racing shoes. You know, you don't need to wear racing flats to go to the expo. But yeah, I think it's completely dependent on the person and what to do. I also don't recommend walking around barefoot for the barefoot runners because you're bound to get stepped on or step on something.
Yeah. Get stepped on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crush your foot. Okay. We chat a little bit about downtime, right? Earlier on, just making sure that you're getting away from the expo, making sure that the athletes are taken care of that way. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I guess it really depends on kind of what you're there for too, because I mean, you guys were kind of more of it was a funner event, but I'm sure there's people like, like the way Ruby and Ian do it, like they're very calculated because it was race. You know what I mean? It's like all on, like everyone needs to be where they need to be. So I guess it really depends on what you're there for and what your goals are as a group and then as an athlete too, right?
Yeah, and so my last the duathlon I did when we were more there for fun.
Yeah.
And so the day before the race, we went and did a tour up at, or no, that was Friday. We did the tour, but we just Saturday when we didn't really have plans. We met up with some friends. So and we had downtime, but not a crazy amount. Where other places I've been, where it's like the day before the race, if I don't have to go to athlete meeting, get me off the couch is only going to happen when I have my drop stuff off for the race if I need to do that, or do my little bike run workout, a little brick. Other than that, if I'm not doing a race-specific event, I'm on the couch.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like this was a very different race for us, where it was slightly more social, but it was still we still did protect our time and energy. It's you have to be selfish with your energy, and we stayed a little bit out of the town, which retrospectively worked really well. So you just get out of the frenzy into the countryside, and it was peaceful and quiet, but still only 20 minutes away. Always giving yourself loads of time. Like we got up at 3:30 in the morning, which seems ridiculously early, but most people don't. You're not going to be sleeping that well anyway, and you're better off because you're never going to be certain how easy it is going to be to get there, to park, to get your way around, the walk to the start, needing toilet breaks. Although in Austria, they have the fanciest portaloos or porta potties. We had one with a television in it outside the hotel. It was just
took
insane.
a picture. We were waiting for a picture.
Yeah, I think there is one around.
That's funny.
But so we had no issue, but some races it can be terrible. So you need you need to be packing loo roll in with you as well. So the
can you say that again?
Wait, packing what?
Toilet roll, loo roll.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, so that's one of the things that I'm always torn on. I like to stay away sometimes.
Yeah.
But man, I am all about convenience. So if I can find a hotel or Airbnb that's right next to the race venue, I will do that. That way, I get in there in the morning, drop my stuff off, transition, and then go back to the office. To take care of business, and then
I like that.
Roll down to start. Roll down to the start line. Because just hanging out sucks.
Yeah. For years here, when we would do the marathon and the half marathon, we used to rent. My company I work for would rent the Hard Rock Cafe in the morning.
Wow.
And it was the greatest thing in the world because you had somewhere to go race morning where you could sit down. There was bathrooms.
Have a beer.
At 9:30 when we were done, yes, have a beer. But all the food. So I mean, all those little amenities where you can actually relax and you don't have to be standing around in a crowd is so good.
Yeah, there's a lot of nervous anxiety at race starts. So your stomach, unless you just don't have any energy that connects to other people, your stomach is going to be rumbling a little bit more. And actually just tracking athletes for the last few months, and despite us getting everything right, sometimes tummies and stomachs just don't play ball on race day. And I'm starting to think now to put in your feed bag or your special needs bag, maybe an instant diarrhea remedy or an instant nausea remedy might be a good idea. I never recommend putting in painkillers. I don't believe in. They can be dangerous on the kidneys, but we would call it Motilium or Imodium. I don't know what the names are in the States.
Or ginger tabs.
You have the instant little ones that you can even take half, and that will, I think it might be a good idea just to help out. If you never need them, you never need them. But it was a mental note I made just after watching people for the last few months with racing.
I actually do recommend putting in like the ginger tabs in your bike if you have a
Yeah.
little bento box in your bike, only because I've been the victim of one day second time I did Ironman Florida, it was really wavy, and I drank the Gulf of Mexico, I think
Oh,
most of it.
oh God.
And salt water in your stomach doesn't do really.
Yeah.
It's not as good for the electrolyte consumption as you would think. And so I was only able to put in on the bike probably like 400 or 500 calories total, which is way less than I'd planned.
Mm.
And my stomach just was not tolerating, and I couldn't even put anything in until about 2.5, 3 hours into the bike. So then I'm trying to force it in, and it took a while on the run until I could finally settle down. And then at Ironman Texas, it had a very distinct taste of duck and goose poo as well as runoff. So it was
Dirty.
tasty.
Tasty.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of hydrating. I'm a big fan of hydrating during the swim, usually with whatever water I'm swimming in. But yeah, so just being cognizant of those things when you're that you might get a stomach issue too from not just the nerves but from drinking the water you're swimming in.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just because you're getting swam over or it's choppy and waves splash over you. So yeah, that's a good point, because even if you have the best nutrition plan in the world and it's been working great in all of your training,
Yeah.
add in some duck poo or salt water and it doesn't necessarily go as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, there's probably some acupuncture pressure points. Like, I know that here can be a good one for nerves in the stomach. Now, I might need to just Google where one for nausea might be, but it could be something that you could do on yourself when you're running, if there was nausea or if there's a spot that can be used. And Cliff, I don't know if they've enough ginger in them, but they do a ginger ginger flavored chew. And I bought those for myself for settling my tummy. Although recently I found the best thing to settle my stomach with biking and running, because it's been really sensitive after last year, is having some bread or pita in my feed bag. It
Interesting.
just seems to offer really good soakage. It's really easy to eat and it's a slow release carb. So I found that that's been working for me. So it might be worth considering having something a little bit more solid in your food options, but try and test it in training.
Just pack a big old loaf of Wonder Bread in your transition bag and roll out.
But I guess the other part, Ian, you could train yourself to drinking those kinds of things that you have on the swim, right? And then you could just drink that beforehand. So
That's what I've been doing, really.
Yeah. There you go. Excellent. Well, this has been a really fun journey. I think getting this perspective from the supporter side. Obviously, we've had athletes on and we've shared stories here on the corner about their experiences through Ironman, but having it from the other side and having that support, and those people who don't have support, you can see how daunting it could be to do this on your own, right? To try to have everything prepared just at transition, right? That's the only time you have a chance to get stuff. So having that support or grabbing a couple friends and getting them on board is super important. So we've listed here some observations, things about some thoughts about checklists and traveling, things about routine food and scheduling downtime. We've got some great tips there. The week leading up to Ironman week, and then a bunch of tips for you as supporters about like expected times of meeting and packing food. So definitely check the show notes for that. I've organized the mind that we call Andrea into some cohesive notes here. So on the other page, you guys will be able to enjoy that. And man, what a fun adventure. And so if you have questions as a supporter or as an Ironman or Iron Girl looking to get the support team together, let us know. We can answer some questions there. We've got plenty of people who've done it before, who've run this sort of thing, and I think it'd be really good. Is there anything else before we go, coaches?
Yeah, real quick on that, you can also take everything that Andrea's been talking about and apply that to the longer ground fondos or road races. Not so much a crit. It's very not applicable to a crit. Other than pooing before you get on the bike.
Yeah.
And
this is true.
But other than that, it is important. So when you're doing those 4 or 5 hour long road riding stages or marathon type running events, really anything longer than 2 hours.
Yeah.
Anything longer than 2 hours. This is a
as we had this conversation, it would have been nice to see somebody after climbing 90 minutes up Mount Palomar. Other than everybody just like doubled over trying to walk to the bathroom to go to the bathroom. But yeah, I definitely think it could be in there for like a 3 to 5 hour ride. It'd be nice to see people at those stops, and there's places for people to be on those
Yeah.
Grand Fonda rides, and they could just, I guess, eat the whole day too. I guess it would be eat and drink all day. So yeah, and who's gonna say no to a cute 6-year-old in a cycling kit, right?
Right.
Actually, the one thing all of the athletes said, and big shout out because there was some girls doing their first Ironman and they were just amazing.
Yeah.
But they said the signs on the course are fantastic. And that's
Sign.
one
Yeah.
thing I've never
Yes.
done is write a funny sign to hold up
Oh,
so that the
okay.
athletes, when they're running past,
I like that.
get a dose of humor and inspiration. And I think that really makes their
Oh,
day.
It does. There's some funny
I always
ones.
enjoy the signs. Yeah.
that's fun.
But you're looking great and you're almost done at 2 miles into the marathon is a throat punch offense.
All right. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us here in the Coach's Corner today. And if you like what you hear, we'd love for you to share with your friends. And if you have a question and be interested to hear us to talk about it, send it over to coaches@endurancelab.fit. Don't forget, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at the Endurance Lab and online at endurancelab.fit. We'll see everybody next week.